I was with an ex-boyfriend, Christopher McCartney.
Okay.
And he was meeting up with somebody he was meeting up with.
You used he twice there. Can you just use names and say that again?
I was with Christopher McCartney, and he was with somebody, or I was with him, and he was meeting up with somebody Kush was meeting up with. There was another time I've seen him with a gun.
Okay. And again, you don't know where in the time frame this was.
I don't know exact dates, no.
Okay. And the only one that you can put within 60 days of this event that happened at the quarry was the time that you saw him at the wharf, right?
I'm not sure if it was 60 days, but the most recent time I remember, yes.
And that's the only time that you have a memory of. The other two specific ones happened well before the incident at the quarry, correct?
Maybe, yeah.
All right. That's the extent of the questions I have about the voir dire, obviously.
Yep.
Other questions later if she testifies.
Yep. The state want to make a comment. I'm sure there's an objection to it. Go ahead.
Your Honor, I do believe that there is enough foundation, given the amount of time and the number of times, and the amount of detail that she can give regarding that. At the very least, I think it's admissible that she saw him with a handgun in the week leading up to the homicide.
Based on Your Honor's prior rulings, I agree that her testimony, what she observed at the wharf bar on the Tuesday or Wednesday before the quarry appears to be consistent with Your Honor's rulings. We object to the habit evidence, not going to be the foundation in neither what we need to in order to establish.
So if I understand what you're saying is, because I've said this is sort of a course of conduct, it's not another act. It's just part of what's happened here. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying there's two evidentiary issues.
Right.
One is the habit issue. The other one is she just testified now about a specific thing that she saw on what I'll say is 2 days before the shooting. She's never told anybody that before. I'm certainly going to teach her about this, but is it admissible for her to say that? I think it's another act, but I also know in Mr. Luco's testimony, he had the same argument. I understand Your Honor in that case, and I'm not conceding it. I spend a lot of time arguing when I think I know Your Honor is going to do.
Okay.
But the habit matter, I do want to Your Honor needs to take that one. I don't think that they've proven that.
Yeah. Two things before. Let me just ask the state a question. Pull your mic down if you could.
Always.
And is the intention to only bring out the evidence of the wharf sighting, or is it he always has a gun on him? What's the intention on the? What do you plan to bring out during the testimony?
Judge, at this point, just the incident at the wharf, it ties into things that way. If Attorney Nelson intends to impeach on what she has or has not told anybody before, I think her statements to Investigator Leinfelder included that he was known to carry a Glock 40. And so I'm just a little concerned about if he says, well, you've never said that before. I want to be able to enter into evidence that she did talk to Mr. Leinfelder about him carrying a weapon.
Okay. So this is what I'm going to do. I think there's a foundation for at least some habit in more recent, well, since Ms. Johnson's met him. It's a little unclear about, 5 times out of 9, that's more than just a coincidence. It's more than an incident. So I do think it fits under 90406. But the specific incident I'm limiting it to is the one incident at the wharf. So we don't get into all the other incidents. And if we can keep it just to the wharf, I'd prefer it just to the wharf, in other words.
Absolutely, Judge.
Problem is, it depends on how you cross. You could open the door fairly easily to the other incidents.
And again, I heard that Your Honor's ruling. I just want to make clear that I know what happens if I ask her the question. You agree you did not tell Officer Leinfelder that you saw Nya Thao with a gun at the wharf while you were gambling days before this? Does that open the door if I'm that specific?
Well, the problem is it implies that she didn't say anything about it. All right, why don't we do it this way? Is if that question's asked and the answer is yes, would you counter that by trying to get her to answer the more general question?
She would have to answer that truthfully, Your Honor.
I mean, no, I didn't tell. I'm confusing matters here. Yeah, I'm
We all
sorry.
agree, I thought maybe I'm factually, do we all agree that she did not specifically tell Fritz Leinfelder about seeing a gun at the wharf days before? If we don't agree on that, then it's an entirely different issue, so.
One moment, Judge.
I can answer that question.
Not now, thank you.
Yeah, hold on one second, okay?
Yeah, and so Judge, that's true. It's not in the report that she saw him specifically at that time. The statement in the report is that she knew him to carry a 40 caliber handgun. Flora does know Kush to typically carry a 40 caliber handgun.
All right.
I think we're back to if I ask that question and she gives an honest answer that says, I didn't tell him that, what can the state do?
State, I think they can ask the general question because that goes to habit. And, does he, I know he's carried it other time, whatever the statement is, but it has to be specifically, it's habit. I mean, this is a person who's using it, has it on him 4 or 5 times when she observes him. So it's like somebody wearing, always wears suspenders. They
Always, but
you shouldn't say most of the time wears suspenders. So I'm letting under 90406. Well,
now
I'm letting under 90406. I think we know what the exchange is probably going to be, allowing to ask that follow-up question. So
I may have inflated something, so I'm just trying to understand. Initially, I heard Your Honor say, let's limit it to the wharf. And then I said, if I do this, does it open the door? What I heard Your Honor say is, if I do that, it opens the door. So then my position would be, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
So I'm not going to open the door. So if we're in that scenario, do we all agree then 90406 evidence doesn't come in?
I'm willing to limit it to that. If she testifies to what she sees at the wharf, you don't impeach her on the fact that she didn't say those specific words. We don't go to that other general statement.
Okay, that would be my plan then. If I do that, I'm not going to impeach her with any specifics about what she did or she didn't say, and then we're done with it.
Right. So I'm just going to say one thing to Ms. Johnson. Ms. Johnson, just listen to the question, answer the specific question. Okay. We're sort of just try to answer the specific question. Okay. All right. Are we ready to bring, okay, one of the
2 other requests.
Yeah.
One is, I know Your Honor made a previous ruling about this witness not being able to testify about things of a hearsay nature that other people said. And I trust the state's not going to ask her that. But as long as the witness is here and she's on the stand, I would just ask that the first request is to ask that you tell her that she can't volunteer information about what she may know about or claim to know about Nya trying to purchase a gun. That's my first request. Second request is I'd ask that you politely, gently inform the witness as well to not volunteer information about her thoughts or opinions about my client's character in any way. I am worried that that's something that she is going to say. I have a good faith basis to believe that because she told me.
And Judge, as to his first point, I just intend to ask her about how or if she knew Mr. Thao, if she knew Mr. Atanesek, and limit it to the day at the wharf. I don't plan to ask her for any other hearsay evidence besides statements that would be party opponent statements. And again, just asking her about what happened at the wharf. I agree, of course, that there should not be any inadmissible testimony given. I also just want to put on the record, and I know Mr. Nelson is careful with his cross questions, but just that there aren't any questions that elicit that, and then feels like she's unable to answer.
All right. So the same thing. Wait, the same thing I said earlier, which is answer the specific questions, Ms. Johnson. They're going to be very limited. So just try to stick to that. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you.
Can I ask her a question while she's on the stand related to Your Honor's order under 90615?
Go ahead, if you want to ask that question now.
Did you speak with Michael Luco about his testimony that he gave in this trial?
Other than that, he had to testify, no.
Did he tell you any of the content of that?
No, he wasn't allowed to.
That's all.
Great. All right, can we bring the jury in? All right.
Thank you, Judge.
All right. Just so you know, you're still under oath, but we'll just start over again. Bring the jury in. All right, everybody may be seated. Thank you for waiting that extra couple minutes. We just had to clear up something. Just so you know, this is Ms. Johnson. We'll start with the testimony, but she is under oath at this point in time. So let me go ahead and start the questioning.
Thank you, Judge. Can I please have you state your name and spell it for the record?
Laura Johnson, FLORAJOHNSON.
And Ms. Johnson, how old are you?
5.
25? And have you ever been convicted of a crime?
Yes,
How many times?
twice.
You can hold that microphone, right? Close it, don't worry about it. Okay. There you go. Go ahead.
Ms. Johnson, do you know Nya Thao?
Yes,
Did you call him Nia or something else?
Kush.
And in July of 2021, how long had you been familiar with Nya Thao?
At that time, 2 years, maybe a year or two.
Do you see Mr. Thao in the courtroom today?
Yes,
Can you please describe for me who you believe to be Nya Thao?
he's wearing a blue shirt, glasses.
Your Honor, to ask the record reflect in court identification.
Mr. Tao is wearing blue shirt and glasses, as indicated. Go ahead.
Ms. Johnson, you are aware that on July 23rd of 2021, Nemo Yang, Peng, and Trevor Maloney were killed, correct?
Yes,
And can you recall the last time you saw Nya Thao before they were killed?
at the wharf, bar in Alaska.
Can I have you repeat that for me?
At the wharf bar in Alaska.
The Wharf Bar?
Mm-hmm.
How many days before their killings were you in contact with him there?
Kush.
Yes,
Like 2 or 3 days.
2 or 3 days. Was Kush with anybody else there?
Yes.
Who was he with?
Black.
And had you ever met Black before?
No.
Met him for the first time at the wharf?
Yeah.
Did Mr. Tao introduce you to Black?
Yes.
Did he refer to Black? Did he use the name Black?
Yeah.
And did he refer to him in any other way?
His brother.
Did you ask them any questions about them being brothers?
No.
You know how long you were at the wharf that day?
A couple hours.
What were you doing there?
I was pushing buttons.
What does that mean?
Slot machine was gambling.
And were Kush and Black together the entire time that you saw them there?
No. Kush left for a little bit in Black's car.
Did you see him leaving Black's car?
Yes.
Did he eventually come back?
Yeah.
Do you know what kind of car Black drove?
At the time, I don't know cars. It was a black car.
Did you observe Mr. Tao possessing a firearm that day? Can
Yes.
you tell me a little bit about that?
It was just his waistband.
Can you describe it at all?
Not really. I didn't. It was only for a second. It was a handgun. It's about
What color was it?
black.
You said it was in his waistband,
Yeah.
but you were able to observe it.
Yeah. And the shape of it.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. I have nothing further, Judge.
Mr. Nelson?
Were you friends with Nemo?
I mean, kind of.
Were you friends with Peng?
Yes.
Were you friends with Trevor?
I mean, we were at one point in time, but not so much. We didn't talk or hang out regularly. Like.
You were mutual friends.
Yes.
Ran in the same circles, correct?
Yes.
You heard about this, I imagine. You were upset, correct?
Yes.
Very upset, right?
Yes.
You weren't there at the quarry that night, right?
Nope.
You didn't see what happened, correct?
No.
In fact, other than maybe hearsay, you don't know what happened, right?
Yes.
You agree?
Yes.
Nevertheless, you probably had a lot of strong feelings about what should happen to perhaps the people that were up there, right?
I guess.
Some of the friends that you hung out with also include Michael Luco, is that right?
Yeah.
He's a friend of yours, right?
Yeah, but
In fact, you came to court with him, correct?
no.
You were out in the hall with him before when he testified?
But I did not come to court with him. No.
That's fair. You were out in the hall with him beforehand, correct?
Yes.
You know him, correct?
Yes.
He knows you, correct?
Yes.
You guys run in that same circle together then, correct?
Not so much anymore, but we used to.
That's all.
Any reject?
No, Your Honor.
All right, you may sit down. And I believe that's it for today, right? All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, another early day. My hope it's
Going to be entering in some of Nya Thao's Facebook records. I'm objecting to the content of those Facebook records based upon failure of the state to prove authentication. I get that I have here Facebook authenticity records, just like they did in the last trial, that will, I think, prove these messages came from an account that is associated with Nya Thao. I understand that. As it was articulated in writing in one of the pretrial documents that we just argued about regarding the other Facebook records, I don't think the state can prove the content of those records because they're going to be records of Nya Thao's alleged communications with Shannon Gace, Gace, Julia Hudman, Hedum, user name THAI space VMJ, a user Nicole Wisnowski, and then a user Chenoa, CHENOA Dawn. And the reason that I think these are different than the Facebook messages that Michael Vang came in through Michael Vang is Michael Vang testified. Michael Vang was a witness. Michael Vang was able to authenticate that he thought the content was accurate, the words that were accurate, and the content was something that he believed came from Nya Thao. These records that we're talking about now, the ones that I just listed, I'm sorry, and there's also some from Nemo Yang. So there's 6 different, at least that's what was at the last trial. There's these 6 different ones, and I don't think they can get them in unless the witnesses themselves testify. Obviously, I appreciate that that's impossible for Nemo Yang. That might be a different analysis. I still don't think they can authenticate the content of any of those. I understand and appreciate that at the first trial, for either tactical reasons or lack of knowledge reasons or ineffective reasons, I didn't object to it the first time. That doesn't prevent me from objecting to it today based upon my additional knowledge of the law as was articulated, and I can pull up a case, the document number that I think we filed last week in relation to the other one. So that is something that is different from last time. Could just have made the objection in the presence of the jury. I thought it'd be better to tell everybody I'm objecting now, and if there's going to be an analysis, we could do it rather than taking a break in the middle of the testimony. So it's not a motion, it's essentially an objection.
Whoever wants to respond to this.
Sure, Judge. Well, a couple of things. The state is prepared to lay what it considers sufficient foundation. We have the Facebook returns regarding Mr. Tao's Facebook account, setting aside the matter of self-authentication of those with the certification that we have. There are, I believe, certain sufficient circumstantial evidentiary aspects of that satisfy the requirements of 90901 along with 90901(5) sub 4. Some of those include this account having a registered name of first name Koushi. I'll pronounce that Kushi. If I'm mispronouncing that, I apologize profusely. Kou being Mr. Tao's middle name, and then a last name registered to the account of Tao. Additional information, it's registered to La Crosse, Wisconsin. There are friend lists within the account that match known friends, acquaintances, associates of the defendant. So I think that is one aspect of it. I also believe that the contents themselves provide circumstantial evidence considering the topics brought up therein. And I would note that I believe it's in chapter 901 that, and it could be 90901, within that, it is permissible for the court to look at the contents of evidence offered to essentially meet the requirements of what it is we bootstrap for purposes of authentication is what I'm trying to say there. And lastly, Attorney Nelson brings up cases that he's brought up in his responses. He brings up good cases. In fact, they're the correct cases, but they don't stand for what Mr. Nelson wants them to stand for. Let's not forget that the standard of authentication under 90901, general provision, the requirements of authentication or identification as a condition precedent to admissibility are satisfied by evidence sufficient to support a finding that the matter in question is what its proponent claims. Furthermore, looking at cases illustrating this, probably the most significant one would be State versus Shacamantonio. There it is. Just continue on to the next line. GIACOMANTONIO. That's 2016 Wisconsin Appeals 62, 371 Wisconsin 2nd, 452, 885 Northwest 2nd, 394. Authentication can be done through circumstantial evidence. Furthermore, text message authentication, and I would say that Facebook accounts and messages can be correlated to text messages, is a low standard that can be achieved with the sort of testimonial evidence of a witness with knowledge and circumstantial evidence that was presented in this case. Text and other electronic messages do not require new rules on authentication. What Mr. Nelson brings up essentially goes to weight, not admissibility. If we can, through circumstantial evidence, lay foundation that it's the defendant's account, that the account was making the communication, if Mr. Nelson wants to argue that the weight of that is low, that perhaps somebody else was using the account, that that's not him, he can do so, but that doesn't go against the admissibility.
Judge, very brief response. Just to clarify, I was referring to document 202. On page 2 of that, there's a section called lack of authentication. That page 2, page 3, page 4, and a portion of page 5. That's the legal arguments that I made before that I was referencing. That's my only thing to add, Judge.
Yeah, I think there's document 202 and also document 214, which was actually the letter I hadn't read before the last hearing, but I now have read before, right after that, after I'd made the ruling, but the ruling wasn't based necessarily on the authentication question. In fact, I think I may have mentioned at that hearing that I didn't necessarily think authentication was an issue. It is clear on 909.0151, excuse me, that's not right. Yeah, 909.01, that, and 909.015, that you can look at the contents, but also the characteristics of the emails and the pattern that they are. Authentication is not, doesn't necessarily go to credibility, whether the defendant necessarily was the one who issued him, although the state will argue that because of what the count is. But given the names, given the references, I think there's distinctive characteristics that in these emails, I think we talked about them somewhat. Also, the content of the emails that I believe it does meet authenticity requirements under 909.015 parent 4, especially. We are not going to have 909.015.1, which is a witness with knowledge, obviously available. So it has to be under that sub 4 section. That Giacomentoni case, which was referred to, seems to support that way of finding authentication, and so the court will allow there to be testimony about it. Obviously, there can be cross-examination about who the source of that is. That's absolutely allowable to challenge the credibility of the source of where the emails or the emails, Facebook messages, I think it really is Facebook messages, are coming from. All right, anything further, Mr. Nelson?
Exhibit 97 is the actual Facebook messages. There's a message to Shannon Gage. There's a message to Julia Hedum, Hedum, and there's a message to before Tai. I don't know, Thai, Thai space VWJ. Those 3 messages, which I think they're irrelevant. So I'm just going to go back to those. I'll answer on our copy. Essentially, each of the 3 of them make reference to. I'm guessing their state's argument. Nia's calling my bro Black. I think that's essentially what the 3 of them will say, is that Nia references Black as his bro or something along those lines. I think it's cumulative. I think under 90403 it's unnecessary. Been established. I don't know that we need to get it through this non-credible way of Facebook messages. So that's my only other argument. I flagged the 3 that I thought were objecting to for relevance. I didn't flag the other ones because
I was just trying to see contextually what was going on here. There is a lot of evidence that everybody agrees that he keeps on saying, brother, do we need to have those 3 just to keep it simpler?
I mean, Your Honor, we're going to have these come in through Investigator Amundsen. I think it's, going to be about 3 minutes of testimony. So I don't think that this is something where we're dealing with a, accumulation issue where we have witness after witness saying the same thing. I think it's another source of information, right? Obviously, Attorney Nelson is going to argue about the credibility of the sworn testimony of witnesses and whether they have, motive to lie about Mr. Tao's connections with Mr. Ratanasak. To tell you the truth, we could have probably pulled many, many more examples out of those Facebook records. I tried to find the ones that were closest in time to this incident.
Okay, I'll allow the state to bring them in.
Thank you.
nothing more from the defense.
Thank you. Yep, take your break, and once you come back, we'll bring the jury in. So if you need a break too, go ahead and take. Anybody else? Come on, you come on. We'll swear in right here.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony given in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Good morning.
Morning.
Can I have you begin by stating your full name for the record and spelling your last?
My name is Richard Amundsen, Amundsen.
And what do you do for work?
I'm employed as an investigator with the La Crosse County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been an investigator with that agency?
Almost 4 years.
And how were you employed prior to that?
I was employed as a deputy sheriff since November of 1998.
Were you assigned to assist in the investigation of the homicides of Nemo Yang, Peng, and Trevor Maloney?
Yes,
And did part of that include interviewing Bridget Schlicht?
yes.
When did you have your first contact with Ms. Schlicht?
On July 23rd of 2021 at about 12:25 p.m.
And what did you observe about Ms. Schlicht's demeanor in that first contact?
The first contact with Bridget, she was very distraught, crying, disorganized.
And was that the only interview you had with Bridget?
No,
You had follow-ups?
yes.
When were those conducted?
A follow-up interview was conducted on July 26th of 2021 and a third interview on April 4th of 2023.
Was Investigator Leinfelder present for the July 23rd interview?
No.
Was there anybody helping you in that interview?
Special Agent John Meyer was present. He was the primary interviewer. I was there to help as second chair and coordinate information that was incoming to relate to other investigators that were working the case.
And what about that interview on the 26th of July? Was Investigator Leinfelder present for that one?
No, he was not.
Was that Special Agent Myers again?
Yes,
Did anybody assist you in the interview on or in April of 2023?
yes, Investigator Leinfelder.
Throughout this investigation, were there electronic communication records of the people involved retrieved by your agency?
Yes,
Did that include Nya Thao's records,
yes,
specifically his Facebook records?
yes.
And how did your agency obtain those records?
Those records were obtained by serving a search warrant to Meta Platforms, who does business with Facebook.
And did you gather intelligence prior to that to determine what a possible account Mr. Thao may be using?
Yes,
I'm going to hand you several items here, investigator, and we'll go through them one by one. You said your agency served that search warrant,
yes,
and then you received documents back from Facebook.
yes,
Have you looked through the Facebook records that you received?
yes,
And have you done that specifically to the account you believe belongs to Nya Thao?
yes.
Second, have you looked at Exhibit 108, investigator? What is this?
This is a DVD labeled State of Wisconsin v. Nya Thao, La Crosse County case number 21 CF 0582, Exhibit 108, Yang Facebook return.
And do you know what's on that disc?
Yes, it's the content of the 3,633 pages of Facebook records.
And does the data on that disc fairly and accurately represent the information in the data as it was provided to the Sheriff's Department from Facebook?
Yes,
If you could then turn to Exhibit 98, investigator, what is this document?
this document is a certificate of authenticity of domestic records of regularly conducted activity from Facebook.
And what's the purpose of this document?
The purpose of this document is to certify that the date on here, August 10th of 2021, these were the actual Facebook records for the Facebook account of Nya Thao.
So it's something given to you by Facebook to verify that the information they're providing came from the account you requested it from?
Correct.
If I can have you look then at the document in front of you that's titled Facebook Business Record. Do you see that?
Yes,
And is this document a portion of the entire Facebook record that's contained in Exhibit 108?
yes,
Specifically, is this some of the identifying information that Facebook provided that is associated with the account?
yes.
I can have you first look at page 1. Can you tell me what the target number is on that page at the top?
The target number is 1-000-334-14-79-5163.
And does that match the target number that was on Exhibit 98? In paragraph 2.
Yes,
Can you go down a little bit further, investigator, and tell me what the generation date of the report is?
the generated date range is June 1st of 2021 at 0 hours UTC to July 29th of 2021 at 23:59 and 59 seconds UTC.
And can you indicate for me what the date is above that?
Generated on August 6th of 2021 at 16:55 and 15 seconds UTC.
We go down to the middle of the page. Can you please tell me the first and last name that's associated with the account?
The first name is Kushi, spelled Koushi. There's nothing in the middle name and the last name of Thao, Thao.
Can you tell me what the registered email address is for the account?
Sure, it says it's Nya Thao, so it's NYAKOUTHAO@gmail.com.
And investigator, are you aware if KOU is Mr. Tao's middle name?
Yes,
It is his middle name?
I believe so.
And then what is the registration date at the bottom of that page?
January 29th of 2019 at 16:56 and 26 seconds UTC time.
This account has been open since January of 2019.
Correct.
If we turn to the second page, does it indicate if this account is still active? That'll be the fourth heading down, investigator.
Yes,
It is still active?
that's true.
If we turn to page 3, is there a verified cell phone number from the 9th of April in 2021?
Yes, there is.
And what is that cell phone number?
1-608-667-7662.
And from your knowledge of this investigation, is that a number that has been associated with Mr. Tao and his communication with others throughout this case,
Yes,
specifically with Bridget Schlicht?
yes,
Is there also credit card information associated with this account?
yes, there is.
And what is the first and last name of the credit card paid or payer there?
Cushy, spelled Koushi, last name Tao, Thao.
Your Honor, I would move for the admission of Exhibit 108 and Exhibit 98.
Objection to 98. 108. And I believe we have, I'm going to call 108 paper copy. Appears to be about, there's 30 numbered pages and then 29 numbered pages. One additional page, so a 30-page document. No objection to the 30-page document. A whole bunch more stuff on here, and so I appreciate the admission of it. But what we're going to talk about, I think, depends on the testimony and relevancy.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I'll allow it to be received, but it's not received entirely. It's only received by what was brought in for testimony.
Thank you, Judge. Investigator Aronson, one other thing with that portion of Exhibit 108, can you turn to the last page of the paper document you have in front of you? Is there a photograph on that page?
Yes,
And what is that a photograph of?
there's a photograph of United States Postal Mail addressed to Nya Thao.
And it has an Onalaska address?
Yes, of 537 Flint Street.
Investigator, if I can have you then look at Exhibit 97. You recognize this document?
Yes,
What is it?
it's portions of Facebook messages between Nya Thao and Nemo Yang.
If you turn to page 5 of that document, does it indicate further contents of that document?
Yes, be Facebook communication between Nya Thao and assorted others.
And does the information in this exhibit fairly and accurately represent the selected messages from the Facebook account that is associated to Mr. Tao?
Yes,
And besides being from Mr. Tao's Facebook account, do these selected messages relate to other people involved in this particular matter?
yes,
Your Honor, I'd move for the admission of Exhibit 97. I'm going to request to publish.
Agreed based upon previous discussions in the court.
The court will receive it, receive 97, allowed to be published.
So if we can go to slide 2, please. Investigator, what do the messages on this page represent?
these messages were from July 10th of 2021 from Nya Tao's Facebook to Nemo Yang.
And can I have you one by one go through those messages for us?
At 9:34 and 30 seconds a.m., Nya states, "Hey, you need to get that 80 to my big bro when he gets better today." At 9:34 and 52 seconds a.m., Nya, "You hear me?" At 9:37 and 15 seconds a.m., Nya again, "He's iconing to K Bullet only." At 9:54 and 26 seconds a.m., Nemo responds, "Ah, shit, all right." At 9:56 and 30 seconds, Nya, "Mateil talk Nemo, he ain't playing games." At 9:57 and 22 seconds a.m., Nya, "Real talk."
Investigator, are you trying to read those as accurately as possible, even if there are possible typos in there?
Yes.
Can we please proceed to the next slide? Investigator, what are we looking at here?
July 11th of 2021 communication from Nya Thao Facebook to Nemo Yang.
And can I have you go ahead and read those?
At 7:21 and 2 seconds PM, Nya, games, hours gone. At 7:22 and 5 seconds PM, Nya, you're too late. At 7:22 and 10 seconds PM, Nya, I told you already. At 7:22 and 45 seconds PM, Nya, when are you going to get the money? At 7:23 and 21 seconds PM, Nya, cuz he tripped me, say me.
We can proceed to the next page, please. What are we looking at here, investigator?
On July 20th of 2021 from Nya to Nemo Yang.
Can you please read this for us?
At 12:49 and 35 seconds PM, Nya, bro, we need to see like 60 to 80 to big bro. He needs new tires.
Can I have us go to the next page, please? And is this where we start the other portion of the communication, investigator?
Yes,
These would be messages from Nya Thao to other people.
yes.
Can we proceed to the next page, please? What are we looking at here?
This is a communication from July 3rd of 2021 to a person by the name of Shannon Gage.
Can you read that for us, please?
At 8:50 and 46 seconds AM, Nya, I had my bro black Benz earlier.
Go to the next page, please. And what are we looking at here, investigator?
This is a communication on July 13th of 2021 to a person identified as Julia Hedem.
Can you read these to us?
6:23 and 47 seconds PM, Nya, Jan, I kind over late with my bro black. At 6:24 and 5 seconds, Nya, I want you to meet.
Go to the next page, please. What are we looking at here, investigator? And you can go ahead and read the message for us after you identify it.
That's a communication on July 21st of 2021 to a person by the name of Ty with the last spelling of VWJ. At 7:32 and 38 seconds AM, Nya, it's all online shit. I can guarantee half the money till my bro black is here and give me the other.
If we go to the next page, can I have you identify this for me, investigator, and then read the associated messages?
This is communication between the evening of July 16th of 2021 through July 17th of 2021 to Chinoa Dawn. At 9:15 and 3 seconds PM, Nya, have you seen my debit card? At 9:32 and 38 seconds PM, Nya, looking for it. It's my mission. At 9:33 and 0 seconds PM, Nya, I'm missing all my money. It's all I have. At 12:48 and 47 seconds AM, Nya, I'm bummed about it. At 12:48 and 57 seconds AM, Nya, Nemo had to have taken it.
We can go to the next page. And this is the last one. Can I please have you identify this for me and then go ahead and read the content?
A communication in the evening of July 18th through July 19th of 2021 to Nicole Wisniewski. At 11:17 and 14 seconds PM, Nya, there was an outgoing call that was not answered. At 11:31 and 7 seconds PM from Nya, outgoing call not answered. 11:33 and 34 seconds PM, outgoing call not answered. 1:02 and 56 seconds AM, outgoing call not answered. At 1:03 and 26 seconds AM, outgoing call not answered. At 1:04 and 0 seconds AM, Nya, all right, Butch, have it your way, ... LMFAO. At 1:04 and 50 seconds AM, Nya, tell Nemo Gaunts he won't show himself. I'm going for his family.
Thank you. I have nothing further, Judge.
Cross?
Oh, Judge, I apologize. It looks like I forgot to move for the admission of Exhibit 96. That's the authentication. I would do so now.
Agreed. 96 will be received.
Morning, sir.
Morning.
How are you this morning?
Excellent, thank you.
Don't get to hear excellent very often, so great. Want to ask you some questions about the work you did in this case, okay?
Okay.
The first work you did was you did an interview of Bridget Schlick, correct?
Correct.
And as you said, you met with her on July 23rd, about 12:25 in the afternoon, and you eventually sat down and had an interview with her, correct?
Correct.
You weren't alone when you did that, correct?
Correct.
And there was another law enforcement officer there with you, we know, right?
Yes.
And this was all audio, video recorded, correct?
Yes.
As is policy there at La Crosse County Sheriff's Department, right?
Best practice, yes.
Best practice, certainly, sure. In this interview on that day, she was there, Bridget was there that day for about 11 hours, correct?
Correct.
A lot of that was spent with in what you would call an interview, right?
Yes.
Some of that was she was alone in the room sleeping,
Possibly, yes.
and some of that was she was given opportunities to eat and other personal needs, correct?
Correct.
That's the entire 11 hours, right?
Correct.
That interview, things evolved over that 11 hours, fair to say?
Yes.
And at least in my head, a couple of different sections, you might have different ones, so I want to go through those so we can see how it evolved over time. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because that's not unusual in your work, that when somebody sits in that chair and they talk to law enforcement about what happens, it might change over the course of that time, correct?
At times, yes.
Sometimes the person is honest right away, correct?
Yes.
And sometimes they're never honest.
Yes.
And sometimes it's a process to pull out the honest bits, correct?
Correct.
So on this case, when you first met with her, fair to say, at least for that first 30 minutes, right? It was just, again, that's maybe too technical of a term, but emotional management.
I think that's fair to say, yes.
She was, as you said, distraught, overwhelmed, shaking, crying, all of those things, right?
Yes.
But at some point, you got to a space and a place with her where you could ask her questions and get the content from her about kind of like what was going on, right?
Yes.
And that was, didn't get much content in the first 30 minutes. It was somewhere in the first hour where you started to actually be able to get content from her, right?
Yes.
All right. And when I say relevant content about like what you'll eventually know, she had knowledge about what happened at the quarry earlier that day, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you some questions about statements she made to make clear to you her mindset, right? Her state of emotional situation, her state of mental situation, okay?
Okay.
There was definitely times in there where she said things like, I don't want you guys to think I'm lying or doing anything bad, correct?
Yes.
And from that, you gathered that she, sitting in that chair, was aware of how you and the other law enforcement officer might perceive her, correct?
I think that she had concern on how we would perceive her.
Yeah. And some of that concern, she essentially indicated she didn't want to get in trouble, right?
Right.
Yeah. And she made that clear to you that she's telling you information in her mind, concerns about her being in trouble for the information that she gives you, correct?
Correct.
And how long have you been a law enforcement officer? Since 98, you said?
Yes.
So that's what, 26 years? We don't have to test our math, a long time, right?
Yes.
And during that time, you certainly know that when there's a person comes in, it's not always clear to you whether that person, it's not always, sometimes it is, whether that person is a victim, a witness, or a suspect, correct?
Correct.
It's not always easy to put a human being in a particular box as they fit this role, right?
Right. They can be a combination of everything.
Correct. And part of what you're trying to figure out is across that, I'll call it a spectrum, a continuum, where they sit, perhaps, right?
We can't label them until we know all the information.
Sure. But once you kind of get an idea, you're going to treat a person who you think is a victim, maybe different than a person who you think is a witness, different than a person who you think is a suspect, right?
I'm going to treat them all fairly and equally.
Absolutely. But there are different tools that you know as an investigator that you might use to get information from somebody, and depending upon your opinion about whether they're a suspect, a witness, or a victim, you might apply those tools in a different way.
Correct.
Okay. And it also depends upon what that person sitting in that seat thinks of themselves, correct?
Yes.
Right? Because a person who perhaps thinks that they're, just again, hypothetically, thinks that they're a witness might not be concerned about things and just freely and openly share everything with you because they have no concerns that they're a suspect, correct?
I think witnesses, you have to, everybody discloses at different paces. So it doesn't make a difference on what they are. It's how they disclose it.
And I'm your experience in talking to people in that chair. The person in that chair's perception of themselves, right? They have a perception of themselves. You're aware of that, right?
Correct.
And their own perception will perhaps limit, guide, influence what they share with you, correct?
I think that comes to the individual person.
You agree that it could, right?
But
And what we know in this situation is that when Bridget Schlick was sitting in there, she was worried about how you would perceive her, right?
I can't answer to what Bridget was perceiving.
She said, well, she said words to you, correct?
Yes,
When she said words to you, you'd listen to those words, correct?
Correct.
And so when she said, like, I don't want you guys to think I'm lying or doing anything bad, you'd think about that, and then you'd consider that and how you're going to continue your interview, correct?
correct, it's a factor.
Yeah, and what you learned is she's worried about being considered a suspect, correct?
I think she's worried about a lot of things.
Including worried about being a suspect.
Yes,
So just to, again, kind of chunk it out, I want to talk about the first essentially 3 hours and 20 minutes, okay?
Okay.
And do you know why I picked 3 hours and 20 minutes?
No.
In the first 3 hours and 20 minutes, Bridget Schlick does not identify the people who were up at the quarry, correct?
I don't have a reason not to believe you, so I don't.
When I
recall.
say she identifies some of the people, correct? She identifies that she's with Nemo Yang and Peng and Trevor Maloney, correct?
Correct.
But in that first 3 hours and 20 minutes, she says that there's 2 other people that were there, correct? That there's 6 people, correct? The 3 decedents, Bridget Schlick, and the 2 unnamed people, correct?
Yes,
And it's not until about 3 hours and 20 minutes where she begins to identify who those other 2 are, correct?
correct,
First, she says Kush, right, at around 3:20,
yes,
and then about 5-10 minutes later, after you gather information about who's Kush, she says Black, correct?
correct,
All right. But in those first 3 hours and 20 minutes, she tells you some lies, correct?
yes,
So I want to go through some of those lies that she told. Essentially, the first lie that she told you is she said she wasn't at the quarry when the shooting occurred. Agreed?
yes,
Her first story to you is she gets to the quarry, an unnamed person points a gun at her and tells her to leave. She leaves, and then she learns about the deaths via Facebook. Is that right?
yes,
That's her first story, right?
Yes.
And eventually she changes that story, correct?
yes,
Now, again, as she's changing that story, sometimes she's telling you things that are wrong about what happened, correct? At least according to her final version. She has a final version that she eventually gives you, correct?
yes,
Some of the things she tells you in the first 3 hours and 20 minutes are contradictory to the final version, correct?
yes,
Which is what we're calling now, or I'm calling lies, and you agree, correct? She said she lied about it, right?
yes,
One of the other lies that she tells you, as far as the category is, she tells you, I don't know who those other 2 guys are.
yes,
And she says that, I believe, repeatedly in that first 3 hours and 20 minutes.
yes,
Fair to say in that first 3 hours and 20 minutes, and this is perhaps a summary, in that first 3 hours and 20 minutes, she is not providing you any facts that connect her to those 2 unnamed individuals. Agreed? She's saying, I don't know them, they're not my phone, I wasn't hanging out with them, these 2 guys come there. She's distancing herself, not connecting herself to those 2 people. Agreed?
I would say it's fairly accurate.
And then, as we know, after this 3 hour and 20 minutes, she then says something about Kush, right? And then eventually she says something about Black, correct?
Yes,
In that first 3 hours and 20 minutes, she uses pronouns talking about the 2 unnamed suspects, correct?
which pronouns?
He, him,
Yes,
right? Instead of a person's name, she just says a pronoun he or him, right? A male pronoun.
correct,
Occasionally, she'll use the pronoun they, correct?
yes,
And in that context, you took it to mean the pronoun used in a plural sense.
yes,
There was times during that first 3 hours and 20 minutes where she talked about a he with a gun, correct?
yes,
And eventually, in that first 3 hours and 20 minutes, she corrects her lie and tells you, I was there, I saw the shooting, right?
yes,
And then she uses the pronoun he shot him, correct?
yes,
And up to that point, she'd always use the pronoun he to associate that with the older man with the gun. Agreed?
I would have to look at the transcript on that.
Okay. I have a bunch of, can I approach Judge?
Go ahead.
Attorney Nelson, can you show me what you're going to show him before you do?
I'm going to go through a couple different pages here of this very marked up transcript, all right? I'm going to ask you about this section here, which I've called number 2. I'm going to ask you about this section here, which I've got numbered 3. Go through here. This section here, probably number 6 as well as 7. Does that make sense? So I'm going to ask you about those. I'm going to give you a chance now to perhaps, 2, 3, 6, and 7. If you want to read those to yourself, then I see if that refreshes your memory, put things into context. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. You get a chance to read those.
Yes.
You appreciate your diligence. You're not going to be expected to memorize anything. If you ever need to see this again, just ask and we can show it to you. Make sense?
Thank you.
Okay. So I want to, just so we can establish the timeline, you reviewed the transcript and you saw what I marked out as part number 2, the clip number 2, I'm going to call it, okay?
Yes.
Essentially, that's the clip which we already talked about, where she, I think at about 12-minute mark, tells you the lie about not being there. I saw it on Facebook, correct?
Yes.
But within that, she uses the pronoun he, correct?
Yes.
And when she does that, she says things like, he got everyone out of the car, correct?
Yes.
And then 30 seconds later, she says some things that are different than that, right? About 60 seconds later, clip number 3, if we're going to look at the time, would it help to look at the times again?
I have no reason not to believe that's close.
And she tells you essentially, I was scared, I know it looks bad, right?
Yes.
She says, I don't know because I didn't know what was going to happen, and then something about a shooter, correct?
Right.
And then she says, I didn't know they were going to die until he did that, correct?
Yes.
So she's again using the pronoun he, right?
Correct.
And then just below that, she says, never had a gun pointed at me in my life, correct?
Correct.
Then as I again skip forward, now we're hours forward, clip number 6 and number 7 that I had you review. You remember that?
Yes.
And that's at about, according to the transcript, 3 hours and 20 minutes into it, correct?
Yes.
And she's still at this point not yet named the 2 people that were up there, correct?
Correct.
And she's still using the pronoun he to describe either both a person, correct?
Correct.
And there's times when she uses he and she'll talk about the person with the gun, right?
Yes.
He was in the back of the car and he just had the gun out the window. Question, pointed at you? Yeah, and said, follow me, correct?
Well, it said it. I think you wrote gun in on yours.
Correct. In the context of that, when she uses the word it, you understand she's saying the it that is pointed at her from a man in a car when they're sitting in the Holiday Inn parking lot who then commands her to follow her, that it is reference to a gun, right?
Most likely, yes.
And then in fact, just seconds later, she's asked by your partner, he has his driver's side window down, he's pointing the gun at you, and she responds, yeah, it was like this within the car. And that's when she raises her hands and extends it and points the gun at you guys. Or a pretend gun, right?
Yeah, it wasn't a real gun.
Obviously. Make sense?
Yes.
So within the context, when she's talking about the he, there's oftentimes in that first 3 hours, 20 minutes that you come to learn the he she's talking about is the older man that she describes with a gun, correct?
That she describes as black, yes.
Correct. Okay. And then it's when, again, just the 320, she talks about Kush and black, and she gives a description of each of them, correct?
Yes.
And she says about Kush, who you come to learn is Nya Thao, correct?
Correct.
She describes him in that, just when she's in that distraught state talking about it, she said, he's short, bald, kind of quiet, correct?
I don't remember exactly if that was statement, but
Sound
sounds
about-
accurate.
Um,
Go ahead.
Page 89, she's asked to describe Kush, and she says, short, bald, kind of quiet, is that right?
Part of the statement, yes.
And then she's talking about what, if any, connections she has to these two people that she's now named as Kush and as Black, correct?
You repeat the question?
Yeah. After she identifies who these other two people were. So now you, as an investigator, you're like, there's 6 people up there. I have the names of 4. I have ways to identify the other 2, but which might not be their birth names, but you've got names in a very loose sense, correct?
Yes.
All right. And as part of that, then you're trying to figure out, okay, not just who is Kush from a character standpoint, but who is Kush from a identify that human being, right?
Correct.
And same for Black, correct?
Correct.
And you are getting some information from her about perhaps who they are in a character sense, right?
Yes.
At least her interpretation of it.
Correct.
And then you're also getting information from her about other ways that might help you to identify them, correct?
Yes.
Like, are they in your phone, right?
Yes.
Right? And she, in relation to Kush, she tells you the truth, correct? He's like, he's in my phone. I've had contacts with him. He's going to be there, correct?
Yes.
And when it comes to Black, she lies.
He did not disclose Black immediately, no.
Well, in particular, you asked about Black being in her phone, and she lied, right?
He did not tell us, no.
She said he's not in my phone, correct?
Yes.
That's different than failing to disclose. She told you the opposite of the truth, which we commonly call a lie, right?
Yes.
Okay. She was also, you continued your investigation to figure out how you could figure out who this Black was, right?
Yes.
You had less information about him because she didn't give you as much information, correct?
Correct.
And one of the questions that came out over those first 6 hours was whether she had had a sexual relationship with Black, correct?
Yes.
And she, again, when talking about Black, lied, correct?
Correct.
She was specifically asked, did you have sex with him? And she said, no. Agreed?
Yes.
It's not that she just failed to disclose it. She misled you.
Yes.
She deceived you.
Yes.
You don't know why she misled or deceived you, correct? I mean, you probably have some hypotheses, but in theory, you don't know why, right?
Correct.
One of the reasons might be is she's trying to distance herself from this person, correct?
Once again, I don't know the reasons why.
Okay.
So
You look like you were contemplating potential reasons, right?
I don't think it's fair to hypothesize on that.
Okay.
Actually,
It's hard to know why she lied unless we ask her, correct?
Correct.
And if she's not willing to even admit to the lie, we'll never know, right?
Correct.
Another lie she told you in that first interview was about Black and his phone, correct?
can you rephrase the question, what you mean by that?
Sure. She, again, you asked her about, is Kush in your phone? And she said yes, and that turned out to be true.
Correct.
You asked if Black was in her phone, and she said no, correct?
Correct.
That turned out to be a lie, correct?
Correct.
And she maintained that lie over the entire course of that first day of July 23rd, correct?
Correct.
She continually said, he's not in my phone, he's not in my phone, I don't call him, I don't talk to him, he's not there. Agreed?
I don't know if she said all those things,
That's certainly what she led you to believe, right?
that he wasn't in her phone.
Which would mean no texts, no calls, she doesn't contact him, right?
I don't know the answer to that.
And you've been a part of this case investigation, I would imagine, certainly in the beginning, if not throughout the entire 3 years that brings us to today, right?
Yes.
At some point, you got her phone, correct?
Yes.
It was at the end of the day on the 23rd, right?
Yes.
And fair to say that she was reluctant to give you her phone, right?
Yes.
You don't know why she didn't want to give you the phone.
He did not state a specific reason.
You just know, if she made it clear to you, she doesn't want you to have that phone, correct?
Well, she did give us the phone.
You agree? She was reluctant at the beginning. There needed to be some persuasion that you did, correct?
Yes.
You got that phone, and then you did what, isn't it you or somebody in your department, the police department, did an extraction, correct?
Yes.
An extraction is where you essentially make a digital copy of everything that's inside the phone, and then you can check it, right? You can use it to check what somebody said, correct?
Yes.
You could use it for lots of other reasons too, correct?
Yes.
It wasn't until you did the extraction and confronted her with the information that was in the phone on July 26th until she told you the truth about Black being in her phone, correct?
She remembered Black being in her phone when we asked who was London Bridges falling down.
And she then, when she didn't come in on the 26th and say, you know what, I didn't tell you the truth before, let me tell you the truth now, correct? It wasn't until you confronted her with, we got this phone evidence and we're trying to figure out who London Bridges falling down is, correct?
Correct.
And then that's when she says, it's Black, correct?
Yes,
And her story to you is, I didn't remember that.
it was something similar to that, yes.
And what you came to learn eventually, not in July of 2021, but you came to learn eventually from her that she deleted lots of information on her phone prior to coming to the police station, right?
Yes,
So on the morning of the 23rd, sometime after she leaves the quarry until she gets to the police station at 12:30-ish in the afternoon, during that time, she clearly had knowledge in her head that black is in my phone, correct?
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, what we know is she took an action to delete all of the stuff about black in her phone, right?
I think she took action, if I recall, to delete a lot of things out of her phone.
One of those things was her contact with black, correct?
Correct.
In order to take that affirmative action to delete it, she needed to have knowledge that it was there, correct?
I don't know what her thought process was, if she was just deleting all of her drug contacts or what, I don't know.
Would you agree that a human being can't take action to delete an item that exists unless they know of its existence? They'd have to have that knowledge.
Objection, Your Honor.
Yeah,
Simple deduction.
it's argumentative. He's answered the question. She deleted all the information. Go ahead.
You don't know why she deleted that, correct?
Well, she had stated that she just didn't want to believe that it was real and she just wanted the stuff off her phone.
Okay.
Something similar to that.
She also told you she didn't tell you about black because she'd forgot about black, correct?
Told us about black.
On the 26th, when she came in and you confronted her, who's London Bridge is, she said, oh yeah, I forgot. That's black. Black's in my phone. That's what she said, correct?
Correct.
Her testimony to you on the 26th was, I had forgotten about that, correct?
I don't recall.
Not
specific-
testimony, but her statements. Apologize. I talked over you. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't recall specifically if that's exactly what her words were, but it was something similar that, oh yeah, I forgot I put him in there as that nickname kind of thing.
You also came to learn, not only during that time before she showed up at the police, that she got rid of digital evidence, she also got rid of physical evidence, right?
Yes,
Eventually, you came to learn, and it wasn't until I think it was like 18 months later, that on the 23rd, she had 2 8-balls of meth, correct?
yes,
And that she took those 2 8-balls of meth and brought them over to a person named Tim Marks, correct?
yes,
That in bringing them over to Tim Marks, she also told Tim Marks whatever her version of the story was on that morning, correct?
yes,
She withheld that information from you and all law enforcement officers until April of 2023, correct?
she did not disclose that information until April of 2023.
That's another one of her lies, right?
I don't think it's a lie. She just didn't disclose it until then.
Okay. So that evidence that she had, the meth that she had, that's evidence, correct?
Would you repeat the question?
Sure. She said that she had 2 8-balls of meth, right?
Yes,
You would consider those 2 8-balls of meth evidence, right?
it would be considered a controlled substance.
And a controlled substance, in this case, could have been evidence, correct?
It could be.
You like to collect evidence, correct?
Yes.
If somebody gets rid of it, that prevents you from being able to do your job, correct?
No, it just means the evidence is gone.
It certainly makes your job more difficult, correct?
It depends on the context.
Sure. It may prevent you from figuring out whether that's true or not, correct? Somebody tells you a story, you do things to corroborate it. Is that right?
Yes,
And so sometimes physical evidence might corroborate a story that you've been told, right?
yes,
So there's value in physical evidence, correct?
yes,
There's value in digital evidence, correct?
yes,
And when digital evidence or physical evidence is destroyed by a person involved in something, that makes your job more difficult, right?
it can, yes,
We talked a little bit about corroboration. That's something you're familiar with, right?
yes,
That's something that you do in your job is you gather information from perhaps one source and then you check it against other sources, correct?
yes,
Is that a very simple sense? That's what you're talking about when you say corroboration, right?
yes,
You test it, correct? I mean, you test it not in a scientific sense, but somebody says they're not in your phone, you're going to go get the phone, check to see what it is. That's essentially a test of the truth of that person's statement, right?
yes,
And in relation to Bridget Schlitt's information that she gave you about the phone, when you tested it, she failed, right?
she did not disclose that London Bridge falling down was in her phone.
She lied about it. You keep saying she did not disclose it. She didn't not disclose it. She affirmatively told you something that was untrue.
Yes,
That's different than not disclosing something. You agree, right?
I think you can have a lie of omission as well.
You certainly can, but a lie of omission is different than a lie of contradiction, right?
Yes,
So eventually in April of 2023, when you find out about her going to Tim Marks and taking the physical evidence and leaving it there, you found out about that, correct?
yes,
Then you wanted to test that, correct? You'd go test it by saying, I'm going to go see if Tim Marks can corroborate what she says, right?
yes,
So you, as an investigator, go look for Tim Marks, correct?
yes,
Fair to say that you were never able to corroborate what she said about Tim Marks. Agreed?
Yes.
I want to ask you some questions about the Facebook messages, okay? There was a section of messages in here that you talk about regarding July 10th, July 11th, and July 20th messages to Nemo. I want to ask you about those, okay?
Okay.
And just to put this into context, you've been involved in the investigation of this case for the entire time, right?
Yes.
Got some background information as you sit here now that maybe you didn't back on July 23rd, correct?
Yes.
What you now know is that Nemo Yang and Nya Thao were at least acquaintances, if not friends, correct?
Yes.
And you've certainly, again, sounds stupid to ask you this, but you've had friends before, correct? You have friends now, right? Yes? Sometimes when you communicate with your friends, you may have different reasons to communicate with them, correct?
Yes.
Sometimes, again, there's just a whole plethora of them, but I won't go through all of them, but you would include, sometimes you might even give somebody a heads up, right? A warning, maybe a more technical term. You might say something,
Like a storm's coming warning, or?
sure, a storm's coming warning, both metaphorically and literally, right? Right?
Sure.
Right? And again, in both senses, literally like, hey, get the kids off the soccer field, there's a storm coming, right?
Yes.
And then metaphorically as well. Maybe that's less often, but you might metaphorically say like, the boss is upset, watch out. Something along those lines. You've done that in your life, I'm sure.
Oh, definitely.
Okay, all right. So these, on July 10th, when Nya Thao sends a Facebook message to Nemo Yang, you have that in front of you?
Which page?
The July 10th, so I think it's the second page.
Yes.
Nya Thao is telling Nemo about another person, correct?
Yes.
He uses, again, the pronoun he, and Nya Thao appears to be referencing Black, correct? Within the context of this, is that how you deduce it?
Big bro.
And as we go through there, in the context of these couple of messages, big bro is in reference to, or at least bro is in reference to Black, right?
Probably yes.
And so, and what Nia is telling Nemo is he, essentially Black, ain't playing games, right?
Yes.
One interpretation of that might be a warning, correct?
Yes.
On July 11th of 2020, there's messages that Nya Thao says to Nemo Yang, and again, he uses the pronoun he at the bottom there, and he says, because he tripped, say me. Is that right?
Yes.
And again, within the context, one reasonable hypothesis is that the he is referring to is Black. Agreed?
Yes.
And Nia is telling Nemo Black is tripped, right?
Does he trip? Say me.
So again, Nia is telling Nemo Black is tripped, right?
Yes.
Tripped probably has a lot of different meanings in that world,
What world?
the world of Nemo Yang. He didn't mean literally like he tripped and fell down, correct? You don't know?
I don't know.
You've heard the word tripped mean perhaps somebody is crazy,
I would use the word tripping maybe for that.
okay? But you've heard it used. Sometimes people use the English language differently than you. Could be used as the word crazy, right?
I
Yes?
don't know.
Could be used as dangerous.
I'm just looking at the context of it here, and it can mean many different things. I don't think it's
Including-
fair for me to infer.
Okay, well, let's just put some of the words that you would say are included in the many different things. Crazy, yes.
Possible.
Dangerous, yes.
I don't know.
Scary, yes.
Don't know.
In the context of this, it's if tripped means someone's high, why would Nemo Yang care?
I don't know.
Why would Nya Thao bother to tell him that another guy's high? Doesn't seem relevant, right?
I don't know.
Certainly might be relevant if it's like, this guy's crazy, right?
Could be.
And that could be, again, when a friend tells another friend of a warning, correct?
Yes.
And those are and then there's another text, or I'm calling them texts, but they're Facebook messages. But you know what I refer when I say text, it's these written communications via a phone application, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then the last one that's included in here is the one on July 20th about 60 to 80 and needing new tires, right?
Correct.
Okay. So we've covered the 3 Facebook communications that were entered into evidence from Nya Thao to his friend Nemo Yang, right?
Nemo Yang, yes.
Now these Facebook messages You have the exhibit number 108, which is a CD which has digital content on there. It's like over almost 4,000 pages, over 3,000 for sure, right?
3,633.
Very precise, thank you. And on those, each of those pages, there are, let's say conservatively, 20 lines of content. Fair to say?
Sounds about right.
So there's tens of thousands of lines of content about messages going back and forth across Facebook Messenger that are included in Exhibit 108, right?
Yes.
And from those tens of thousands, what we have in Exhibit number 97 is about 30 maybe lines of content that have been pulled out and shown to people, right?
I can count them if you like.
Sure.
Approximately 28.
All right. One of the messages that is in here is a message that was sent to a Nicole Wisnowski. Is that right?
Yes.
And that was a message that I'm going to in particular talk about the last one there, but I think it said on the 1 a.m. on the morning of July 19th of 2020. Is that right?
Are you talking about the 104 and 52nd
Yes, sir.
AM? Yes, there's a message there.
And we know from these same records that, well, let me just put this in. The message to Nicole appears to be Nya Thao telling something to Nicole to tell something to Nemo. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. And what we know, because in the same document, there's a message from Nemo Yang, or excuse me, a message from Nya Thao directly to Nemo Yang on July 20th, correct? That's, I think, page 3 or 4, I guess.
Yes.
Right. So just again to put it in context, according to the Facebook message, 19th, he sends a message to Nicole to say something to Nemo, and then on the 20th, Nya talks directly to Nemo, correct?
Yes.
And on the 19th, when he talks to Nicole, he is talking about, tell Nemo if he doesn't show himself, I'm going for his family. Those are the words there, correct?
Yes.
Again, like the rest of them, you don't know what that means, correct?
I think it says what it says. He's going for his family.
But as far as going for your family, doesn't mean if he's going over to talk to the family, if he's going to go do something else. Doesn't say explicitly, does it?
Correct.
And as we know throughout these things, there's all kinds of different words that are used in different ways and or typos, right?
Correct.
And one of the ways that you might determine the meaning of it is you'd go to either maybe the person who heard it, correct?
Correct.
And this was a message to Nicole Wisnowski, correct?
Yes.
You didn't go and speak to Nicole Wisnowski, did you?
I did not.
So the context under which Nicole Wisnowski heard it is you don't know, correct?
No.
You agree?
I just know what's written. That's all I know.
Exactly. And what my question was is you don't know the context under what it was written because you didn't go and talk to the receiver of that message, right?
I did not.
Because you did not, you don't know the context.
Correct.
And you don't know what, if anything, Nicole Wisnowski did with this message, correct?
Correct.
But we know after Nya sends this message to Nicole, he sends a message to his friend Nemo about tires, correct?
He sends a message to Nemo Yang. Yes.
And it's about tires, correct?
Well, no, it says, bro, we need to see like 60 to 80 to big bro. He
Yes.
needs new tires.
We need new tires, correct? That's how it ends, right?
That's how it ends. Yes.
Nothing in that message directly to Nemo Yang about family.
Big bro.
Um,
Bro.
And again, in the context of all of these, big bro is in reference to black. Is that right?
Possibly. Yes.
Nothing in reference to here in those texts directly to Nemo Yang about Nemo Yang's family. Agreed?
Correct.
No. All right. And you know through your investigation that trying to be some of these messages may be related to drugs, right?
Which messages?
The messages between Nemo and Nya, they talk about 60 to 80. That might be about drugs
Or money owed?
or money owed. Sure. Could be about a lot of different things, correct?
It could be. Yes.
And you again, involved in this investigation, you understand that there was a lot of other people that Nemo was hanging out with then, including people like Michael Vang, correct?
Yes.
And you know who Michael Vang is, correct?
Yes.
And again, slightly indiscreetly, we know Nemo's family might be involved with some activities with Michael Vang, correct? In that same world.
Yes.
Okay. Now, there's some Facebook messages in here about the term, yeah, we went through, about the term bro. Did you see that, correct?
Yes,
And sometimes, I'm imagining you've heard the term bro used throughout your personal life as well as professional life, correct?
yes,
And you've certainly heard the term brother, correct?
yes,
It's certainly, do you have a brother?
no,
Sometimes you know, just through your life experience, that people can use brother in a broader sense than just familial, right?
yes,
And even in a more informal sense when they use the term bro, correct?
yes,
It might be the modern version of dude, correct?
possible,
You don't know. People use it for different reasons in different ways, correct?
correct,
And in fact, there are times I know within law enforcement that you work with other people in law enforcement and you might consider them your brother, right?
yes,
It's even though they're not familial with you, correct?
correct,
All right. And sometimes you might even use that term with people you don't necessarily know, but because you share a common employment, right?
yes,
And as you said, there's times when you work with others, right? Like in the interview with Bridget Schlitt, you were second chair, correct?
yes,
So you'll go into a room with somebody else, correct?
yes,
It's another person that you're with, correct?
yes,
And I would imagine that you've worked alongside many different people in your 28 years, correct?
yes,
And sometimes, whether it's in the interview room or whether it's out in the field, sometimes things happen that you didn't expect to happen, correct?
yes,
Sometimes somebody that you might consider a brother or a bro or a friend might do something that you didn't expect that person to do, correct?
possibly, yes,
Like even just a simple example, right? I know police are allowed to lie to people when they interview them, correct? You know that, right?
yes,
You kind of had an expression on your face that looked as if you were like, yeah, we can do that, but you didn't, not really proud of the ability to do that, right?
well, I don't like to do that,
But you know it's something that can happen, correct?
yes,
And you have that tool available to them, but you probably use it sparingly, fair to say?
yes,
And there might be times when you don't approve of its use, right?
And I'm gonna object to relevancy.
Sustained.
If somebody went into an interview room with you and they were a friend, a coworker, right? And they did something unexpected like lie, you wouldn't be responsible for that, would you?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. Move on.
The tens of thousands of Facebook messages that were in exhibit number 108, somebody made some choices about what the jury was going to see, correct?
yes,
Some of those choices was that you?
no,
And some of these, like for instance, the July 3rd to Shannon Gage, that's essentially the relevance of that is Nemo called bro black. Is that right? Excuse me, Nya called black his bro.
Your Honor, I'm objecting to speculation.
You don't know why those, I'll withdraw. You don't know why those would be considered relevant, correct?
Objection.
Is knowledge, intelligence, jury instruction 300, credibility factors.
For the
Oh.
jury, not for this witness.
Sustained. Just go ahead.
You're not here to tell the jury what weight, if anything, to give to the term bro, are you?
Again, Your Honor, objection.
Sustained.
What you know is we're here to determine what happened up at the quarry, correct?
yes,
And what you know is you interviewed Bridget Schlitt about what happened at the quarry, right?
yes,
What you know is Bridget Schlitt said she was worried about getting in trouble, correct?
yes,
What you know is Bridget Schlitt lied about what happened up at the quarry.
she did not fully disclose what happened at that quarry until after multiple interviews,
Talked about the difference between not fully disclosing. She lied by deceiving and misleading you, telling you things that were not true. Agreed?
at times, yes,
That's all.
Is there much redirect?
There is, Your Honor, if we want to take a break.
Yeah, so let's take a bit of a break this morning. We'll take about 25 after, which is 15 minutes. Let's take a break this morning, ladies and
So I'm going to show you what I've labeled number 5 on page 86 and clip number 6 on page 87. We previously talked about clip number 6. If you want to just read those to yourself, and then I'm going to ask you some questions about whether that refreshes your memory.
which interview is this?
Sure. This is July 23rd, 2021 at approximately the 3 hours, 19 minutes and 25 seconds, which is clip number 5 that I'm asking. Get a chance to read that?
Yes,
Did that refresh your memory?
yes,
What she told you is, and this is again about the coming out of the Holiday Inn, she said, I seen one gun, I looked back when I was walking, and I seen that he had a gun and he was holding towards someone like this over my car, the older guy was. That's what she said to you, right?
yes,
And then she's asked, so the guy that's in the driver's seat of the black car, he's holding the gun towards who? And her answer, when he was in the back of his car, he just had it out the window, Meyer, like pointed at you, schlicked, yeah, and said, follow me. That's what she said, correct?
yes,
Again, my original question, she said, when she came out of the Holiday Inn, he, being the older guy with the gun, pointed the gun at her and said, follow me, right?
at that portion of the interview, yes,
I want to ask you about Tim Marks and your attempts to corroborate that, okay?
yes,
Sounds like you went to great efforts to try to figure out whether you could corroborate that, correct?
yes,
And you did that because of the significance of what Bridget had told you regarding her interaction with Tim Marks, correct?
I wanted to corroborate the story, yes,
Because that's what good police work is doing, correct?
yes,
Especially when there's perhaps a issue of contention, a fact of contention, correct?
it's good police work just to follow up on leads that are presented to you,
Especially in a triple homicide case, correct?
yes, in every case,
But some cases, I would imagine you just work more hours on than other cases, correct?
yes,
Some cases you give more attention to than other cases, correct?
yes,
That's just the nature of the work that you do, correct?
yes,
And so in some cases, you might make a value judgment, for lack of a better term, about how much time and attention you're going to spend on the investigation, right?
yes,
And in this case, about Tim Marks, you spent the time and attention to try to corroborate it by making calls to that person, correct?
yes,
Going to their actual place of residence and knocking on their door, correct?
yes,
Speaking to other witnesses about how I can find that particular person, Tim Marks.
yes,
Finding out not only where they live, but where they work, correct?
yes,
And then even if they don't answer the call, what you did was you went to their place of employment and you spoke to that person's boss, right?
yes,
You're really trying to find that guy, correct?
yes,
Because that's an important person that may or may not corroborate another witness's statement, correct?
yes,
It's just good police work, right?
yes,
No reason not to do that good police work. Agreed?
correct,
Lastly, you talked about people not giving you phones sometimes, okay? I want to ask you about that. Essentially, what I heard is people don't want to give you the phone because they think there's things on the phone that might get them in trouble, correct?
yes,
So the reason to not give you the phone is to protect themselves from their own criminal activity, correct?
that is one reason,
On July 23rd of 2021, about 6 hours, almost a 6-hour mark into the interview, what Bridget Schlitt told you is, I don't want you guys to think that I'm lying or doing anything bad, correct?
if, can I see the quote to make sure that's,
Approximately the 6-hour mark into that interview on the 23rd, Bridget Schlitt made statements to you about her motivation for saying what she was saying, right?
yes,
And what she said was, I don't want you guys to think I'm lying or doing anything bad, correct?
yes,
That's all.
Redirect.
no, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Thao. Anyway, oh, give me just a moment. We'll call your next witness.
Yes, thank you, Judge. State will call investigator Fritz Leinfelder.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony given in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
for your patience. Can I have you begin by stating your full name for the record, spelling your last, please?
Fritz Leinfelder, Leinfelder.
And what do you do for work?
I'm an investigator for the Lacrosse County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been an employee of the Lacrosse County Sheriff's Office?
I will be celebrating my 32nd anniversary, November 1st of this year, and I've been in investigations for the past over 23 years.
What positions did you hold before that?
I started my career out by working in the jail. I went out on patrol, and then the last 23 plus years have been in investigations.
And what was your role in this particular investigation?
The day the call came in, myself along with Sergeant Investigator John Williams were named the lead investigators of the case. Eventually, I took over as the lead investigator for this case.
And was your agency the only one involved in this investigation?
No. There were
others?
There were many others. There was Lacrosse City Police Department, Alaska Police Department, Homeland Police Department, Division of Criminal Investigations from the state, the Marathon County Sheriff's Office, which is in Wausau area, Wausau Police Department, the Portage County Sheriff's Office, which is in the Stevens Point area, along with the Stevens Point Police Department, Brown County, which is in the Green Bay area, Door County, which is just north of Green Bay area, the U.S. Marshals Warrant Apprehension Team. I'm sure there's some that I'm missing, but there was quite a few across the state of Wisconsin that all assisted us in this investigation.
And Your Honor, I'm going to ask that we republish Exhibit 2.
Go ahead.
I'll give you a second, minutes. We'll go through one at a time here. I'll give you this Sharpie too, some instructions in a moment. You recognize this map of Lacrosse County, investigator?
Yes, I do.
And we're going to do this the old school way, since I don't have a laser pointer with me. Can I have you stand and show me the places on the map on the screen behind you when I ask you about them?
Yes.
Okay, Judge, is it okay if I have him
That's
leave the
fine.
witness box? Thank you.
Lovely.
Are you familiar with where the Onalaska Holiday Inn is located?
Yes, it's a Midwest Drive in Alaska,
And what about the Baymont in Onalaska?
3300 North Cooley Road in Alaska also.
And are you familiar with the mother of Nemo Yang?
Yes, that's Pazilki.
And are you familiar with where she was residing in July of 2021?
Yes, she was residing at N5606 County Road M as in Mary, which would be approximately right in this general vicinity.
Before that curve there?
Yes, yes.
And are you aware of approximately how far away from the Romskog quarry that is?
Approximately 2 miles south of the rock quarry.
Investigator, can I have you actually mark the location you just indicated on the published visit on the physical copy of number 2?
Yes,
Thank you. Did you respond to the quarry the morning of the 23rd of July?
yes, I did.
And what was your initial role upon responding?
Again, when we have an incident like this with the sheriff's office, we pretty much call everybody out. So it's kind of all hands on deck. When I got there, it was determined that I was going to be one of the leads in the investigation of the triple homicide.
Did you begin processing the scene immediately?
No, we did not.
Why not?
When we have a scene like this, any major scene, major crime, law enforcement's initial response to that would be to seal off the area, make sure they have limited access or no access into an area to preserve evidence. As soon as we do that, we make a determination. And then in cases like this one, a request was made to the Wisconsin Crime Lab for them to come to our crime scene and make the processing of the crime scene with the crime scene specialists.
Do you have to wait a while for them to arrive that day?
Yes, we did. They typically respond from either the Madison or Milwaukee area or a combination of both those areas. So once the request is made, then they have to do what they have to do to gather enough people on their response team to be able to come. So typically it can be hours before the crime lab arrives at our location.
What'd you do in the meantime?
I was paired up with Special Agent from the Department of Justice, DCI, Joe Welsh. He and I began doing a neighborhood canvass of the area. Basically, that means we're knocking on doors. On the map, you can see County Road S, which would be to the west of the quarry. Special Agent Joe Welsh and myself, basically we're knocking on doors, talking with the residents there, if they had heard anything unusual, if they had any type of surveillance cameras, noticed anything out of the unusual while we were waiting.
Were you part of the team that briefed the crime lab when they responded?
Yes, I believe the crime lab arrived around 10:45 that morning. We gave them a briefing of what we had known at the time regarding the crime scene. So that was part of my responsibilities.
Did you stay at the scene at that point?
No, I did not.
Were you part of Bridget Schlicht's interview on July 23rd?
I did not interview Bridget Schlicht. I did not sit down and interview Bridget Schlicht on the 23rd, no.
What about the 26th of July?
No, I did not.
At some point, did you assist with the interview of Bridget Schlicht by producing photo lineups?
Yes, I did. As information was being developed, I was able to produce some photo lineups that were going to be shown to Ms. Schlicht. At one point, I believe I came into the room and asked about some photos to her. Eventually, I did make a photo lineup that another investigator, as best practices, to have another investigator show that photo lineup to the individual.
And what's the purpose of the photo lineup?
To make it as clean as possible, I'm the one that's making the photo lineup, so I will have the information and knowledge of which individual in the photo lineup would be. So to keep it clean, so there's no discrepancy, the photo lineup is turned over to an investigator that has no knowledge of who the individual is, and then they do the photo lineup show in a specific order of things is how they would do it. So it's basically a way to keep it clean, so they can't come back and say that here's the guy we're looking for. Are you sure it's not this isn't the guy we're looking for? So it keeps it clean that way.
And did she positively identify Camera Tanasak from a photo lineup that you completed?
Yes, she did.
If I can have you look at Exhibit 111, is that the photo she identified as being Camera Tanasak?
Yes,
And was that a positive identification? Is that indeed who that picture is of?
that is yes.
Your Honor, I move for the admission of Exhibit 111 as well as to publish.
Received and published?
Your investigation went on for several days.
Yes,
At some point in time, was a vehicle located that was connected to the suspected targets of your investigation?
yes, it was.
And what was that vehicle?
It was a black Mercedes-Benz,
And who was that vehicle registered to?
a Virginia Creole.
And where was it located?
It was located at the intersection of Van Lannen and I believe it's Town Line Road in the town of Green Bay in Brown County in a very remote area.
Was anybody with the vehicle when it was found?
No, there was